Hey guys, XJ here. I'm going to talk to you today about how to set up your G29 or your G920 920 Logitech wheel and pedal set specifically for iRacing. Now, this is not the only way to do it. It's just the way that I do it. So maybe it will help some of you out there. Hopefully we won't take too long getting into this video so you can get out there and do some racing. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is go to the Logitech website. And as soon as if you type in Logitech software, as far as in Google, it should bring you to this site right here. Download for Windows or for Mac, just depending on which system that you're using, and go ahead and get that install going. I've already installed it, so we can go ahead and skip that step, obviously, for me. Now, when you do install, you're going to have one of two screens. That's why I've got this pulled up here in this little PDF that I created for a buddy of mine who just started iRacing. But you'll see the top one's a little bit older Logitech software. The one at the bottom is the new G-Hub. And it doesn't really matter which one you use, I don't think. Personally, I use the one at the top. But again, it does not matter. So once you've got it installed, you should see your wheel and pedal set in there. And it'll recognize it, show a little picture there. One of the things that you can do is set up for specific profiles for specific games. Now, iRacing is not automatically identified in it. You'll have to direct it to the execution file inside the game folder if you want to set up a profile specifically for iRacing. It will recognize certain games, like ATS is one that's recognized down here. That way you can set up the pedal with the buttons specifically for each game, however you choose, right? Well, I digress from that. So let's get in here and talk about what you do need to change. I would tell you to leave everything on default. And you can click the little drop-down arrow here that you'll see as far as at the top of the steering wheel. And when you do, it'll bring up the properties regarding the steering wheel. It'll also have one for the pedals that will do the same thing. And I believe they're both should be set as far as at their basics. And all of them are at 50%. I have found that this is the best way for it to operate as far as sensitivity. Now, some of you may want to lessen it or increase the sensitivity, just depending on what it is you're looking for and what it is you're trying to get out of it. But at least use this as a baseline to start. So after you've got your wheel installed through the Logitech software, now we're going to go into the iRacing site in order to customize it and set up the settings specifically for iRacing. Go ahead, set up your test car, test track, doesn't really matter which one you use. And once you've got that set up, as far as the testing conditions, the track and the car, click test car on track. And that's going to start the game, as you should know, or hopefully you know, unless you're a newcomer as far as to iRacing. So on the iRacing main screen, once the game does start, you'll have the test button at the top, but in all likelihood, you should see configure controller. Should be a yellow, where this is all green, it should be yellow, and it should say configure controller. If it doesn't, that's fine. You can click on options over here, and on the options page, you will go to, you'll get a configuration here that you can run through as far as your controller. All right. So a few things to note here as far as when we're talking about the calibration of your wheel and pedals in iRacing when you configure the controller. So one thing, when you start to, and once iRacing gets up and running, you're going to be on the main screen that you see right here. Except you should see in this block, instead of it saying green with test, it should be yellow with black lettering. I believe it says configure control. If it doesn't, it's okay. You just need to click on options. And in the options block, then you'll be able to calibrate here as far as independently of steering, pedals, and gearbox. But let's go back over here. Click on configure controls. That should be right here. And it's going to walk you through calibrating your wheel, a few of your buttons, and your pedal set, right? The first thing it's going to do is your wheel. Make sure you move it from right, just follow the directions on the screen. It's really simple. The only thing that I would tell you is ensure that in the second part of the wheel calibration, when it asks you to turn the wheel 90 degrees to the left and hold it, make sure you're not following the graphical wheel that's up here at the it will be up here at the top of your screen. Look at your actual wheel that you are holding, all right? And hold that at the 90 degree. It can be slightly different on occasion from car to car. But again, keep it at the 90-degree according to your actual wheel. Once you walk through the wheel, you're going to go through the pedals as far as your acceleration, your braking. Ensure that on your braking, you do push all the way down as far as you can go in order to get a good calibration. And then it'll also calibrate your clutch. From that point, it will ask you a couple of things, I believe, where to turn right, where to turn, or where to look right, where to look left. You can pick any buttons that you prefer as far as to look right or left on the wheel. It doesn't really matter. And then it will also ask you for an exit tow pit screen, and that's where it brings you back to this main menu when you're in game and actually driving. So again, pick a button, go from there. Now, once you've calibrated your wheel and pedal set, this is where the good stuff's at. Now, didn't come up with this all on my own, guys. I have gotten these settings from a plethora of sources and put them all together as far as for what works for me. So if you'll see right here, we've got this yellow box highlighted. On the options, on the drive menu, under options off the main menu into the drive tab, which is the first one that will pull up, you'll see these things: brakes and force feedback. Okay. The brake factor for the G29 pedal set, and remember, we're talking about the G29 or the G920. These can be vastly different depending on which wheel you're running. If it's a Thrustmaster, if it's Fanatec, you're going to have completely different settings in order to get the best performance out of your wheel. So please keep that in mind for the G29 or the G920. So for the brake force factor, 2.30 seems to work really well for me. It allows me to use the pedal at its fullest and also avoiding the lockup when it comes to as far as the tires on the pavement. As far as force feedback, enable force feedback, obviously, if you want to use that, which why you wouldn't if you've got a force feedback wheel. Make sure linear mode and is unchecked. Reduce force when parked, completely optional for you if you want the wheel to jump around a little bit while the car's not moving, as far as sitting in the pits or waiting to roll out. As far as for the pace lap, up to you. You can click that on or off. But let's talk about the strength, the wheel force, the dampening, and the minimum force. Now, if you'll hover the mouse over when you're in game, if you'll hover these over each one, it'll give you a little bit of a graphical explanation, text explanation regarding what those specifically speak to. For me, the easy one, wheel force, leave it at 1.0, which is I think the default what it sets up as. Dampening. This helps to provide a little bit more feedback as far as for the G29. 90% might be high, but I would tell you to put it somewhere between 70 and 90%. And it can vary by the vehicle, by the track, and how much dampening that you want to add or take away as far as for that force feedback. The minimum forces, and this is a really great thing, and I will vary this one also between 25% and 40% depending on the roughness or smoothness of the track in order to feel those little light things in order to so that you can determine what the car is doing, all right, as far as forces. Strength. The strength is going to vary. 16.1 to 15.1 works very well for me with the GT cars. I can back that off sometimes between 10.1 to 12.1 when it comes to oval. So I would tell you that your window is somewhere between 10.1 and 16.1 when it comes to your strength of the wheel and how much force feedback that you want to, how much you want to feel. I shouldn't say fight the car because that's not it really, but it's just giving you, you know, all those underlying senses that allow you to determine what the car is doing. Those are the best settings that I have found with the G29. Again, guys, if you're using a Thrustmaster as a prime example, this is probably not going to work. Thrustmaster, I will give them credit. Their force feedback is probably, even on the T150, much better than the G29. But the pedal set is nowhere even close to what the G29 offers. And that's why I'd say like that, you have to do a few more things with a Thrustmaster T150 when it comes to getting a decent pedal set that just comes stock out of the box. and getting the setup. So this is not for that. This is for the G29 and the G920. Now, one more thing I want to point out. If you'll go to the options tab, just to the right of the drive tab, you're going to see this external display. The one thing I want to show you here is use the G27, G29 in this case, shift indicator lights. Now, these are the awesome little red, yellow, and green RPM lights that show up on your wheel if you have the G29. I don't believe the G920 has them, so sorry guys on the 920, but those that are using the G29, click this little box right here and it'll interact with your RPM in-game. Nice little touch. Okay guys, that just about does it, so get out there and start racing with that new wheel in your hand. Hope these settings work out well for you. If you at least got some options to play with them to get the settings exactly the way that you would prefer them. But I think this is a great baseline start for that G29 or that G920. If you like the video, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you're not a member here at Golfing Idiots /XJ Racing site here on YouTube. Check out the links above as far as for following me on Twitch, Twitter, or Facebook so that you can catch me live streaming with some racing. Maybe I'll see you out there on the track.